I'm the husband of one wife, the father of one son. Life should be simple for me, but I'm somewhat of a musician. My name is Hovig. Welcome to my podcast, Drop a Note. My track record with violinists is not great in general. I really don't have anything against the instrument itself, but it seems to have something against me. You're going to get a bonus in today's episode because I'll be telling you not one, but two stories. The first one in which I almost strangled a violinist, and the second one in which a violinist could have almost strangled me. Let's begin with the first one. We travel back around 25 years and fly to Canada. I have many relatives in that part of the world, so while on a business trip to North America, it made sense to stop by and visit them. It was nice to get acquainted and in some cases reacquainted with my many cousins. First cousins, second cousins once removed, twice removed, some not removed far enough, and so on. No, I jest. It was nice and special. I spent a few days with my aunt's family in Toronto, and that's when I got to know Jonathan, her third child, my cousin, and a violinist in the making. Jonathan was so obsessed with his violin that he insisted on taking it with him when we drove to Chicago for a weekend to visit his older brother in university. When we got to Chicago, we were exhausted after a full day of driving, so we quickly checked in at the lodging we were staying at to go to bed. Now here, I should give you an explanation and an observation. First the explanation. In my culture and upbringing as an Armenian from the Middle East, the firstborn child is always expected to care for the younger ones around him, siblings, cousins, and so on. You have to make sure they are behaving, they have enough to eat, that they are not lost, that they're not disturbing the adults while they're crying. Now, those of you who are firstborns like me, you're probably nodding your heads in agreement because I guess these expectations are not unique to Armenian families. And here's my observation. Americans love air conditioning. They love running their units full blast to create almost Arctic conditions inside. When we went to Chicago, it was the middle of summer and it was hot, so a bit of air conditioning would have been pleasant. But when we went to the bedroom to sleep that night, it was anything but pleasant. It was freezing cold inside. "Can I have your blanket?" my young cousin Jonathan pleaded with me. "Yes, of course," I replied automatically, my firstborn sacrificial mode kicking in effortlessly. We went to bed. I had a miserable night, tossing and turning, somehow trying to get some warmth by hugging myself and the pillow. Still, I thought at least Jonathan would be warm enough with two blankets. I had done the right thing. "How did you sleep?" I asked him when he appeared in the morning. "Not good. I was cold," he said. But didn't my blanket help? You should have been warm enough with two blankets." "I didn't have your blanket on me," he explains remorselessly. "I used it to wrap around my violin. It goes out of tune easily if it is cold." My frozen fingers instantly came back to life and started making their way to his throat. Wait, why not use his precious violin strings to strangle him with instead? I enjoyed that mental image, but it remained just that, an image, because the firstborn safety backup generator kicked in full blast like the air conditioning in me, and I decided to forgive him. Little did I know back then that the roles would be reversed somewhat years later in a totally different setting where I myself would be at the mercy of another violinist. I was asked to record a special recital by an internationally acclaimed violinist. I got to the venue early enough to set up and do some sound checks while she was rehearsing. My colleague had given me a couple of Neumann microphones to use, so I decided to set them up first. Great mics, quite heavy but great sound. I put one on a mic stand and extended the arm high up, dangling over the violinist to pick up the sound from above while she continued rehearsing. She is sounding so good, I thought to myself as I turned back to go and set up the second microphone. Then, from the corner of my eyes, I noticed a shadow, something falling from above. Time stood still. My body also seemed stuck with it. My mind, though, quickly realized two things. I had forgotten to secure the mic stand, and secondly, the shadow falling was that of the heavy Neumann microphone, and crash! That didn't sound like the mic hitting the floor. That sounded like the mic hitting wood. Oh no. To my horror, I realized it had come crashing down on the violin itself while she was playing. Time, which you may remember had stood still, suddenly seemed to come back to life in overdrive mode. I was running around like a headless chicken trying to apologize, no words coming out of my mouth. The pianist and everyone else at the venue were looking also in horror. Don't worry. Listen to me. Don't worry. Was I dreaming? It was the violinist herself calming me down. It's okay. It was an accident. Don't worry. I don't think there's any damage. I looked to her face, wondering if she was in shock. No, she looked fine. She meant it. She carefully retuned the strings, checked the violin, reassured the others, and continued with the rehearsal. Not sure how I managed the rest of the evening. I was soaked with sweat and every part of my body seemed to be shaking in perfect resonance frequency of sheer terror and unimaginable relief at the same time. During the recital, somebody passed on the program notes to me. There was a section inside just about the violin itself. It said that the violin was given to the artist through a special loan arrangement from Italy to use for the recital program that year. It was one of those priceless, rare violins, the very one I almost destroyed that evening. Maybe, just maybe, our merciful Lord was being gracious to me now for not actually strangling Jonathan all those years ago. What you sow, you reap comes to mind. I will forever be grateful that the violinist that evening was not just a brilliant musician, but she was a brilliantly kind and forgiving soul. So what happened to Jonathan, you may be asking, the one whose life I spared? Well, why don't we hear from him directly? Cyprus calling, Toronto. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, good afternoon.
I already told my listeners about the story of your violin and my blanket that you borrowed, so they hopefully had a few chuckles about that. Looking back after all these years, I laugh about it too, but I wasn't laughing that particular night. I guess you remember it.
I do. It's probably been at least 20 years now.
I wanted to ask you, first of all, how did you have the specific interest and passion for the violin itself?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, coming from a musical family, my older brother and sister played instruments. They played trumpet, flute, and I would try to join them on a little recorder when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I just wanted to be kind of included with them. And so my mom realized that there wasn't a string player in the family. So violin being, the natural, most popular choice. So she started me on violin and I just loved it right away, basically. And I also had a chance to go to see a concert when I was 7 years old. It's a pretty famous Armenian violinist, Ara Malikian, gave a recital with Seruj Karadzian in Toronto. This is probably 1996. And I was basically hooked from then on, getting CDs. Actually, I remember now, sorry, I'm going off topic maybe, but after that incident with the blanket, I think you realized how serious I was about the violin, and then you offered to buy me a CD on Amazon.
Yes, right. I remember that.
Yeah, so I know exactly what I picked. I picked the Paganini 24 Caprices, and I still have that CD, and I listened to that CD I don't know how many 100 times.
Brilliant. So I actually invested in your music career But I remember teasing you about, well, we went to Chicago, teasing you that the postman will bring your CDs, and since we're not home in Toronto, he'll probably take it home and you won't get it. So, yeah, I gave you a hard time. I gave you a hard time. It comes back to me now. It's interesting you say about going to a concert, your mom taking you to a concert and then getting inspiration by someone performing, because I had a similar thing. I've been writing about it also. My mom took me to a choir performance. This was in Lebanon, and I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home and watch the cartoons, And she sort of forced me to do it. And that evening in the concert hall, hearing that choir performing, and just the buzz of the theater and live music and everything, it hit me, that, and sort of put me on that track. So yeah, that's interesting that little things like that can sort of put us on a course that we never would have gone otherwise. So.
Yeah, I mean, we had another good family friend, Jonathan Garabedian, and she took me to my first symphony concert around the same age, and she was worried that I might get bored and not be able to sit through it because it's a formal setting and you have to be quiet and all that. But apparently I was absolutely glued to the stage and just kind of enthralled. So I think seeing those kind of things and, being exposed to soloists who are like traveling the world and performing, I think that kind of struck a bit of a kind of like a dream fantasy and passion that like, I want to be one of these like touring soloists. That I think that was kind of what made me so into music, was like just the idea of traveling the world and performing concerts. And I mean, of course, on top of loving the violin and the sound of the violin. So
now my wife Anna is if we go to any kind of concert or any kind of music production and she sees a violin player, she panics a bit because she worries that it may be painful to the ears. You may agree with me. I think we sort of discuss this and we say if your level of violin playing is very, very good, then it's going to be great. But anything lower than that can be painful. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, for many people who start an instrument and then just kind of leave it after a few years, you're used to hearing these very scratchy, squeaky sounds coming out of the instrument, or if you have a child who's learning, and then the beginning, I would say at least 1 or 2 years, that's going to be the majority of the sound that comes out of the instrument. Unless you're really talented or somehow set up very well from the start and, you're lucky enough to make a good sound. But I mean, it's always something that we deal with. So that's kind of how the violin got that reputation, probably.
It seems to me like it's a more exposed instrument when it comes to the sound, where maybe other instruments you sort of can get away with it not being exactly with your intonation, but violin, because I've got the register maybe or something, it's much more in your face, sort of.
It's very delicate. I mean, if you're off by just a millimeter, it's gonna with your bow placement or with your left hand fingers, intonation will be off, sound quality will be off. So it's there's very small margin for error.
Tell me about the instrument you play on and how I guess intimate you are with it, how precious it is for you, and whether you're happy with it or you're longing to get something better. Tell us about the instrument.
I'm the first owner. It was like a brand new violin, not made for me, but I got it through a violin dealer in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the violin maker is actually from China, but there are two brothers coming from like a family of violin makers, and one of them moved to New York. The other one moved to Michigan, and they started their careers there. And it is a great instrument for sure. Like, it's made so well. At the time it was made, it won several medals for craftsmanship, for tone, at the Violin Society of America, like the violin making competition. So they're absolutely great makers. Although I did meet him a few years ago when he came to Toronto, and his newer instruments sound definitely a lot better than my period of instrument. And he said himself, he's like, I learned a lot about sound. And makers improve over their life, if they're really dedicated to their craft. So It has a great warm sound, very, very rich, but it's a bit difficult to play the violin. This particular violin I have, because sometimes you have to work extra hard to make some notes clear. Because I mean, not to get too much into the details, but he made the violin plate kind of thick. So there's a lot of wood in the violin, and the thicker the plates of the violin are, the warmer the sound, but then the harder it is to play. And then if they become too thin, they're easy to play, but also over time the sound can become thin.
But you didn't answer the last part of my question. Are you happy to continue with it, or do you have a wish list of what you want to get?
I've definitely realized the limits of my violin for some years now. So it's not an instrument I would say, no, I'm going to be happy for life. I definitely want to get something that's just more well-rounded, balanced, clear, easier to play. And there are some great modern makers I've been keeping my eye on, but the prices have kind of skyrocketed along with everything else. So compared to what I bought it for. So yeah, hopefully in the foreseeable near future, I can get something better.
Right. And tell us a bit about what you perform these days, your career. I mean, I know you're playing with ensembles and orchestras, and I know you've done solo recitals and so on. Just give us a snapshot of what you have been doing or what you plan to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a freelance musician, so every week is a little bit different. So I guess the main types of work I do are I'm a sub with several different orchestras throughout Ontario. So I spend a lot of time on the road. In fact, there's a joke here. Our main highway here is called the 401. And freelance musicians, we call ourselves we play in the 401 Philharmonic. Because, every week you're driving, to another side of the province to play somewhere. So anyway, yeah, I do that. And we have some really interesting shows. I mean, last weekend we played 2 Chopin piano concertos back to back with a string orchestra without a conductor. So we all had to lead each other. And then 2 weeks before that, I was playing with an orchestra that had acrobats on the stage, kind of Cirque du Soleil style, which were doing their tricks and whatever, and we were playing some ballet music by Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake, Prokofiev, all that. So those are really fun programs I enjoy. And then I also do more modern music gigs. So like tonight I have a corporate gig. We're playing for this anniversary of a car dealership for 100 years of sales. So that's a string quartet gig, and we'll probably play a lot of pop music, romantic stuff, and then I also do my own solo kind of gigs for all kinds of events, from weddings, proposals, birthdays, and I play both acoustically and electrically. So if I'm playing acoustic, then I'm playing more a kind of romantic classical works, and then the electric side of things, that's when I'm hooked up to a sound system, and I also have background tracks playing. Right. So for that, I've done anything from jazz to rock to top 40, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift kind of stuff. So yeah, there's that, and they have their seasons too, right? So like in the summers are more popular for weddings, and then the orchestra season would run from September to like May kind of thing. And then you have your seasonal holiday gigs too, like Christmas time. We performing with choirs. We'll do like Handel's Messiah gigs. And then on top of that, I teach as well. So
you're sort of doing a variety of performance and teaching to pay the bills and to have a livelihood. I'm going to come to a question about that in specific, but you mentioned about playing without a conductor. That's very interesting. Why was that? Was he on strike or something, or he didn't make it on time?
Well, the conductor that we work with, he actually lives in Mexico, and he conducts an orchestra in Mexico. He just comes whenever we have a concert here. In this case, I think they were trying to cut the budget a little bit. They didn't want to hire a full orchestra. And I don't think he wanted to fly out for it. So they said, okay, why don't we just make this a chamber music experience? And it was difficult. It was stressful for sure because Chopin is not so straightforward in his music. So,
Right.
like, you know, for comparison, if we were playing a Mozart or Beethoven piece where it's there's not as much rubato and ebb and flow, it's easier to just play, you know, following the concertmaster. But in this case, we really had to, I mean, we had to rehearse a lot. We had to really listen to the pianist and like know the solo part super well so that we can be synchronized.
I hear quite a lot from young people and parents the young people who are into music, they're talented, but they keep saying, well, my parents say, or I feel like I should do it as a hobby, study something else and get a degree in something else so I could have a more reliable income. Now, obviously, you took the leap into the deep end and became a musician, maybe financially. How has it worked out for you? Also with COVID years, I'm sure that was difficult without performances, live performances.
Oh, 100%. I mean, well, starting with COVID, those are probably the most difficult and trying times for artists in general. And I know a bunch of musicians who actually ended up getting some type of, you know, 9-to-5 job because, you know, so much of their work was just disappeared. I am happy I stuck it through. I mean, there were some opportunities online here and there and to get creative with things, performing outdoors, things like that. But yeah, it wasn't a fun time. But to answer the other question, I think what a young musician needs to be prepared to do is to, first of all, make sacrifices and to be aware of what the lifestyle is going to entail. For me personally, I was pretty oblivious because I was so focused on just practicing and trying to get good at my instrument and, you know, dreaming about like amazing music and concerts and all that, that I didn't think about the practical side of things, to be honest, until I was kind of thrown into it. So in the first few years, it's slow, and that's what they say about like, you know, freelancing in general, especially if you move to a new city or something like that. It takes at least 1 or 2 years to become connected and established. And in the beginning, you do have to accept a lot of work that doesn't always pay well, or it's not the type of work you want to do in order to kind of get connected. So that's one way to do it. But the cool thing about freelancing is that there's so many ways. Like there's, you know, we wear a lot of different hats, and if you want to specialize more in recording or in more in like purely, let's say, orchestral playing, or becoming more of an event player, or get into art administration kind of thing, there's a lot of avenues to explore with that. But I would say also that in terms of the, you know, like not having stable income, or it's being something that's, you know, up and down, it is true that with performing work, you know, unless you have like a full-time gig with a certain orchestra, or you have a residency with I don't know, like a school or a restaurant or an entertainment company, it does ebb and flow. Like, for example, January and February are usually slower months for live performances. I mean, I think in general, and then it picks up from March and on. But to kind of counter that, I think musicians should be ready to do the type of work that's maybe not their complete passion, you know, like whether that's, you know, accepting gigs that are not the type of music you like to play, or teaching to fill in the gaps, or so anyway, just to summarize, I think it's definitely possible if you really enjoy what you're doing and have a passion, and let's say that passion is about 30% or 40% of the work you do, and then the other 60% is kind of the things you need to do to pay the bills,
Right.
then you do it, you know? And it could be very, if you're able to kind of accept that you have to do that kind of a balance, then I think there's no reason why it shouldn't work.
any job would have that probably percentage where you're doing things you enjoy for 30-35%, and the rest of the job maybe something you don't enjoy. But it's good to hear that it's worked out for you, and you sort of gave a sort of a broader perspective of opportunities you can have if you become a musician, which is very, very good to hear. Your greatest fear when you're performing, what is it?
In general, I think it changes depending on the type of performance. But sometimes I don't know why I have this randomly. I'll get this fear of dropping my bow while I'm playing, and I think that's the most embarrassing thing that can happen. Like you're playing, and then because sometimes you get sweaty with your fingers, and or if there's like a really soft passage and you have to very lightly hold the bow, and you get a little sweaty, and then it falls. And in a really quiet moment, that would be very embarrassing.
Has it ever happened to you, or you're just fearing the possibility of it happening?
Well, one time I felt the bow slip from my fingers and I grabbed it at the last second. And there was a little, maybe like 1 or 2 seconds of an awkward kind of transition. But so my heart, kind of skipped, but then it was okay.
Now, I'm very grateful that I didn't strangle you all those years ago when you borrowed my blanket with. Yeah, because you turned out to be a wonderful young man, and I'm so grateful to talk to you tonight. Any parting words, any advice for young musicians, especially, Jonathan, from your perspective? You gave a few things, but anything else you want to say to someone aspiring to go into music?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 2 things, and these kind of pertain to me, especially. The first thing would be to focus like really on what you want to do and not get distracted, especially in this day and age. There's so many people doing all kinds of things, on social media, in the musical community. And if you really like something, just hone in on that and don't be kind of sidetracked by pretty much anything anyone says or does, because I think once you're focusing, doesn't really matter what it's on. Just the simple fact of focusing really helps you get to your goal, and I think makes you happier. And then the other thing I would say, which is kind of the opposite, but I think they go hand in hand, is to be just to be more like financially aware of what the market is like. Like just do your homework, do your research of like what people are charging, what kind of rules or policies there are. I find musicians a lot of times are very kind of want to be always kind, and that's a good thing, but can easily kind of become pushed by people who are very cutthroat in the business. And I think it's important to know your ground. Like, you can't go overtime unless there are certain things in place, or like, this is your rate, this is what you charge, those kind of things. I think took me a while to me to kind of put my foot down in a sense, to be like, no, this is what it is. This is the standard market rate. And, every city is different with that. And there's such a huge range among musicians. And yeah, just coming to terms with, presenting your value and sticking to the value that you offer. I think that's important.
Well, this is good. I learned a lot today. Thank you, Jonathan. It was great.
Yeah, thank you, Hovig. It was a pleasure. And hope you can stay always warm with all the blankets for the rest of for the rest of time.
Yeah, I have my wife that keeps you warm now too, so it's not as bad.
There you go.
Take care. Thank you. I was talking to Jonathan Garabedian, violinist in Toronto, and we heard some short excerpts of him playing Paganini's Cantabile for violin and guitar, and the first movement of Mozart's Concerto No. 5 in A major. You can find Jonathan's contacts and social links in the text information of this podcast. And if you live in Ontario or happen to be visiting the province, keep your eyes and ears open to catch him at a live performance. And if you do, go up to him afterwards and ask him to autograph your blanket. Hey, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Drop a Note. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you would tune in next time when I talk again about music and life and everything in between. Until then, my name is Hovig, and I am somewhat of a musician.